I can't hear you. There's a lot more people than that. Good morning. Welcome to State Center Community College District Faculty Convocation. I'm so happy to see all of you here today. I am your MC for the day. My name is Rico Guerrero. I'm the Executive Director of State Center Community College Foundation. Yes, thank you. I've got a foundation supporter. It just takes one fan to have a club. And I'd like to say that I was asked to be MC, and I thought I was going to be doing a little rapping. And I was a little wrong about that. Because I was ready to do the hip, hop, hippity hop, to the hip, hip, hop, you don't stop, to the bang, bang, boogie, up, jump the boogie, and the... Yes! All right. So, but that's not the case, but I'll still serve as your MC in another way. You know, Les Miserables was here the other day, 2 nights ago. And now I'm up here. You know, so Mom, I made it. She's so excited for me to have this opportunity to share a stage with a Broadway musical. So you get a one and only show of my performance. So we need to know who's in the house. So all you have flags. Let's see those flags in the air. Wave them like you just don't care. Okay, so we're going to do a roll call. So, in no particular order, so there's no favorites of which flag I put out first. Hey, here we go. Okay, so when I say, who's in the house? I'm going to say, you say, Reedley's in the house for all you Reedley College folks. Who's in the house? All right, that's okay. Good start. It is early in the morning. All right, Madera, get ready. Who's in the house? Oh, yeah, okay, we're getting better, warming up. All right. Clovis, here we go. This is not a competition, but is it? Oh! Orale! All right, who's in the house? There we go. All right, next one, Fresno City. Who's in the house? All right, we don't want to forget our district folks, and they may need some help. So, State Center is in the house if you're with any folks in the district. So, who's in the house? But you know what? The funny thing is, you are all State Center. Everybody in here belongs to State Center Community College District, and we appreciate all of you. So now, all your flags in the air, you're all representing State Center. When I say who's in the house, say State Center's in the house. You ready? Who's in the house? Oh, come on, you guys got more vinegar than that. Say it like you mean it. We're gonna do it one more time and then I'm gonna get on with this show. Who's in the house? All right, well, I'm gonna get back to the podium because I actually have a script and I'm supposed to stick to it. All right, well, whether you have served our students for a long time or if you're just starting out, you are critical to the educational journeys for all our students, all the students you meet. Serving those who are seeking to learn and create their futures is so important, both for our students and for the future of our communities. Because we are rarely together, do me a favor, please take 1 minute to introduce yourself to colleagues near you who you may not know. And introduce yourselves, and you can do fist bumps, high fives, whatever you're comfortable with. Just say good morning. right, 5 seconds. All right, thank you everyone for doing that, for taking part in that. I knew if I did that, I was going to lose some of you. So this convocation is assigned with you and your work in mind. Today, we will learn information about our students, our community, and our economy. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Thanks for the applause. All of our presenters are excited to share their work with you and how we all might work together to improve the lives in our community. After our morning session here, we will travel across the street for lunch, some surprises, and breakout sessions for you to choose from. Because we all work in different corners of the district, our chancellor wanted to have this opportunity to gather and learn together. While we are all different, we have so much in common, and I think we'll see that today. Now, please join me in welcoming the Chancellor of State Center Community College, Carol Goldsmith.
Hey. Well, good morning. Oh my gosh, there was a lot of who's in the house. I think there's a lot of people in the house. So good morning, everyone. Oh, come on. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. I'm going to put this up here so I don't have to hold it. What a good-looking crowd. I don't think I've seen all of you in one room before. This is good. Well, good morning, everyone. Let's give a round of applause to Rico. Was that wonderful? Hey, Don, can you hand me the clicker? Oh, all right. We'll give it up for Rico one more time, shall we? You know, on behalf of all the trustees, which I believe we have our board president with us, Trustee Nazarene Johnson. Where are you? There you are. So on behalf of the trustees and your college administration and our students, I just want to say good morning and welcome. This is the first time that, since I've been here, that we've all come together. And I believe it was Rebecca Snyder said, well, we did this once before and it was horrible. And I said, well, thanks for telling me that. I have a low bar to hit today. Hopefully the breakfast food was good. Was it breakfast? I think breakfast, yes? So if any of you have been around me for a little bit, you know that I like to start off in a place of gratitude. And so if we could take just a moment to thank our students who helped usher us in, and if we could think about the people who put our breakfast together, the people who are working right now to work on our lunch, and the people who grew the food in the fields. So ladies and gentlemen, can we give a round of applause for those people who helped us? You know, the last couple of years have been tough, challenging, to say the least. Some would say we've all experienced a collective trauma as a society. And when we look at our students, we see that. Heck, when we look at each other, we see that. You know, we've all been through a lot. And that's why for me, it was really important to bring us all together, because I wanted to look at all of you and tell you how thankful I am of you and how proud I am. Because even though it's been frustrating at times and we've had conflict at times, we have showed up for our students and for each other. We've gone through tremendous amount of change. And let's face it, we all like to talk that we're change agents, but nobody likes change, right? There was an honest person in the crowd. Yes, nobody likes change. But we did, we changed together. And you know, these last couple of years, I saw some of the best in humanity. Some of the best. And that best was in you. You all showed up for our faculty. You showed up for one another. You showed up for our students. And there's no doubt that you transformed the lives of our students. While it was difficult and traumatic for all of us, it was definitely a transformational time for the students we serve. There is no doubt, and our trustees and I understand that the work that you do is complex and hard and emotional, and yet our faculty and our staff and our administrators do this work with fidelity and compassion. My colleagues and I and those on the State Board of Trustees understand the extraordinary work you do, and you do it well, and we're incredibly grateful for your commitment. And I'm honored to be here today to tell you, each and every one of you, that in person. As we continue that working together, I believe it's one of the reasons we're one of the best districts in the state. And I don't say that lightly. If you look at some of the data, the primary reason I believe is because we're focusing on our students. These faces. We're not seeing students drop like other places, even here in the Valley. Our students are staying on the path, and they're staying on the path because you care, and that you're showing up for them, and you're focusing on their education and their abilities to get to where they need to go. Our students feel this, and their families appreciate and respect this. I talk to parents all the time. They're so grateful for the experience that their son or daughter, their child is having here. And that's why we're trusted by the communities we serve. This is not advancing. Well, I'm still grateful. Can you let the guys know in the back it's not, we should be on slide 4. Technology. It's one of the challenging things still, right? Hey, there's our beautiful students. You know, it really is, you know, if you think about California, we are one of the largest and most diverse systems of higher education, the California Community College system. And I know that our system office, I had an opportunity again to speak with our new chancellor, who's from the Valley, Sonia Christensen, and she, like all of us, is working to break down barriers of racial justice and equality for millions of students in the state. Now, the CSUs and the UCs can think they're great, but when you think about the volume of students we serve, it's literally millions. And here at State Center, the largest community college system in the Valley, our trustees and all of us here are committed to building a community where faculty and staff and administrators are reflective of the community we serve, and we support a mindset and our policies that focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and access and success for our students. You know, it's an inaugural part of who we are to put diversity, equity, and inclusion at the center of our work, and dare I say also anti-racism at the center of our heart of our policies. It's our practice and it's our work. And together, we are driving a durable change of culture, not only here at State Center, but in our Valley. And that can be not understated. You might have heard about the DRIVE initiative in Fresno. That was because of this work that's being done here at our colleges. And we know that this work is working for our students. So I'm incredibly grateful that we're all committed to ensuring the equal education opportunities for all of our students and our communities we serve. And if you think about our history, we must do this because we have to change our future. It's also, I think, a recognition of the complexity of our present state, in our valley, in our nation, and it's a call to action for a better future. You know, embracing diversity means that we must intentionally practice acceptance and respect towards one another, and understand that discrimination and prejudice creates and sustains privilege for some while creating and sustaining disadvantages for others. You know, I purposely selected those 2 photos up there because I think both talk about who we are. If you had an opportunity to go downtown, we lit up the old Guarantee building for the first time in probably over 60 years during the month of June. With the colors of acceptance, with the colors of you belong. And then in July, we lit that old building with the beautiful colors of our country. Both can exist, and I believe that's what we're all working towards. So in order to embrace diversity, we need to acknowledge that there is institutional discrimination here and other institutions. And we must also understand that we all have implicit bias. All of us. And that our collective goal is, as written in policy and new ed code, that we're trying to eradicate and educate those elements so we can become better. You know, when you think about who we are as a community of individuals, who comes to save us, who comes to protect us, we're diverse. And I believe that investing in cultivating and maintaining a climate where equity and mutual respect are both intrinsic and explicit by valuing individuals and groups from all backgrounds, all demographics, all lived experiences. And we're providing the wraparound services that they need to be healthy, safe, and successful. That's the work that you're doing each and every day. So can I give you a round of applause for that? You know, our students can benefit when we all learn together. It's a shared responsibility in creating inclusivity. In a larger community, we'll benefit as well if we could be a little more kinder and accepting of differences. Our economy will be better. In fact, I would argue we would be a little bit healthier and happier if we could just accept a little bit more. 10% happier, I'll go for that. You know, our commitment to diversity requires that we strive to eliminate those barriers to equity and that we act deliberately to create a safe, inclusive, and welcoming environment where individual and group differences are valued and leveraged for our growth and our understanding as an educational community. I believe that together, along with our classified professionals, our administrators, our board of trustees, and our students, we acknowledge and really think about the concept of diversity and inclusion, and we understand it's evolving. It's evolving. And that we must create a space for allow us to understand and grow together. This is our shared responsibility. It's not just the chancellor's job. It's not just the equity guy's job. That is everybody's job. So today, all are welcome. Tomorrow, all are welcome. And I hope you feel that today. You know, our students feel it. Our students have been transformed because I know that you've been working hard on your efforts to make sure people feel safe and included and welcome and like they belong, and that you believe in them and that you can see their future even though they can't sometimes, even though they self-destruct sometimes, that you're there and you pick them up and you keep going. We know that they feel that they belong because you know what you've done? We have surpassed, despite a pandemic, despite racial reckoning and political craziness and the divisiveness and the grumpiness of our world, despite all of that, you know what you all have done? That. 5,361 awards degrees last year, shattering all records. Yes, that's a flag waver right there. Yes, that is all of you putting your work together. 5,361 families have been changed. That's huge. That didn't just happen overnight. For the last 4 years, we have been working together to improve this, and look at that trajectory. It shows a journey of success. And every college is doing its part. Every college is doing its part. And so I need to talk a little bit about, for those new folks, you know, who we are. Demographics matter because this is our why. This is our why. And it's important if you think about, where we're at. We're still not seeing our young men come back, but they're coming back, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But, you'll see we have men and women here, and we also have non-binary. And I've actually had a conversation recently with somebody who said, I have to take a drink for this, hold on. Well, Doc, it's only 2%. That really doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It matters. This fall, we're slated, if our trajectory holds, to be over 33,000 students at our colleges. If you do the math, that's over 664 students. That matters. They belong. Yes. And we're all a Hispanic serving institution because it's our largest population we serve. And if you look at every demographic, we closely mirror our community. And this one's interesting. I like this one because, the majority of our students are going on for their degree and they're going to transfer, and we know that. But look at the ones who are undecided. They need your help. Dear Lord, help them get decided, would you? And of course, we have some that are career focused and they're moving forward, and we're going to keep talking about that. So I need to talk a little about student enrollment because it is how we pay the bills. So let's talk a little bit about how we did compared to the rest of the state. Well, the rest of the state, the pandemic, as we all know, and you've been reading in the papers, the pandemic really tanked enrollment. But we did better than the rest of the state. I'd like to think it's because you offer a value proposition that our students know and they see it. So instead of 18% loss, we only lost 10. So what does that mean? If you look here, I know it's really tiny, we'll have the slides later. The bold print here, the bold print is really the pre-pandemic numbers. And the red numbers, yeah, we're in the red. The red numbers are what we reported last year on our 320 report. So really, we're down. We're down 2,745 FTS to be exact. But you'll notice those green numbers, there's hope. Right now, between comparing this year to last year, we're at 8.6% over where we were last year. That's a great way to be. We're heading in the right direction. And that didn't happen by accident. The trend that's going upward didn't happen by accident. No, in fact, we came together. One of the first things that I did when I became chancellor is I got a lot of smart folks like you in the room and some outside experts, and I said, we need to look at the root causes of why our young men are not coming back. And so we focused on the importance of well-being. And each of our colleges, they too identified specific barriers and developed interventions. Because each college, it was a little bit different, right? So each college had different interventions. And guess what? It's working. Let me say that again, it's working. You'll see the bar chart behind me, 43.6% is where we had our young men before the pandemic, then it plummeted. Look, we're on the rise. That's because the interventions are working. We're seeing the percentage of our young men rebound. And this is something we should acknowledge. We should celebrate. Our counselors in the house? Woot, woot, counselors! Our outreach teams, our faculty who go to these enrollment activities and go out and do recovery efforts and go into the community, it's working. Young men are coming back. Okay, this is a really ugly slide, I know it. This is a snapshot from our data dashboard this Monday, and we're not done. This shows a comparison over the last few years about how many days we're out, because we start next week. This shows almost 9% above where we were last year. That means we're growing. So I think that those extreme registration events, those matter. Going out to the community, you talking to students, it matters. We are working, and it's coming back. And let me share another good piece of news. I include this slide about dual enrollment because it's actually recovered fully. Let me say that again. It's actually recovered fully from pre-pandemic numbers. And I believe this is an indicator of future college-going success because if they're taking college classes in the high school, they're going to keep coming to us. So for all of you who are involved in that, give it a round of applause. There's hope. There's hope. And we're at virtually every K-12 in the Valley, so that's fantastic. There's the numbers. Some people like to say, well, you know what, those kids aren't successful. The data doesn't lie. Look at that. 83% of our students, they complete a course because of you. Yeah. In fact, they do better than our regular college student. I don't know why, but they're doing better, so we'll take that. And let's just give our young students a round of applause, because this is amazing work. 83%. Wow. So, how many of you are soccer fans? Woo! So I would be remiss, because, you know, it's Women's World Soccer, it's real exciting. I have to talk about the arts and athletics. I love that photo. You know, the eyes of the world are talking about soccer right now, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the importance of athletics. I think we need to take a moment to recognize the pursuit of education goes beyond the confines of our classrooms. Athletics and the arts play a significant role in shaping and making people feel comfortable and fostering teamwork and discipline and creativity and resilience. Perhaps you might have seen some of the many faculty accolades when you walked in, but in case you missed it, we have amazing coaches here. And we have winning teams. Yes, give it up. I know Coach Robley, I saw her in the lobby. She's our state. She was named head coach of the year. Let's give it up for Coach Robley. Coach Stark and Coach Perkins and Reedley had the men's golf championship. Yes. And is CJ here, or is he out running somewhere? CJ? Hey! Coach CJ ran the Boston Marathon and was the 4th American across the finish line. Hot dog. Woo! And I talked about 3 colleges, but guess what? You know, our board and your chancellor are committed to providing a robust athletic program at each of our colleges. So this year, women's soccer will be coming to Madera. I can't wait to see Maddie playing soccer on the field. I think that's going to be great. But seriously, our students really need these activities. Our community needs these activities. And the other thing that we don't talk about enough, and that's the arts. The importance of arts can't be overstated. In all of its forms, it encourages self-expression and allows our students to explore their emotions, ideas, and perspectives in a safe and caring environment. By exploring art, students can gain a deeper appreciation of our diverse experiences of others, and they can learn more about themselves and the world. And plus, it makes our world a better, more beautiful, joyful place. Art has the potential to bridge gaps and create connections and foster greater understanding and connections. We all go to concerts, and you see people together from different religions, different political backgrounds, different walks of life. They come together for the love and appreciation of music. And I don't know if Dr. Cooper's here, but we have a Grammy-nominated person. Is Dr. Cooper here today? Dr. Cooper, he's like the guitar hero in the Valley. And then we also have Juan Guzman, who's bringing the love of theater to Selma. I mean, come on, where's Juan? And then, of course, Steve Norton's artwork is going to be displayed at our airport. So many wonderful arts. Yes, give that up. And of course, big news, I know you all know, but Lee Herrick made incredible news being selected by our governor to be California's 10th Poet Laureate. He's out doing that work today, but let's give him a round of applause. So I want to take it a step further. I'm going to ask if all the coaches, all the artists, all the choir, all the writers, all the people who love music, create beautiful things, please stand. If you teach in the arts or you teach in athletics, please stand. Stand, stand, stand. We love you. You are doing it. Yes, yes, we love you. Yes. You know, and you might be sitting there, well, I teach English and math. That's good. Yes, it is. And we love you too. But what we also know is that our athletes and our students, they're excelling in the general education as well. So all of our athletes, all of our coaches, all of our artistic folks, they're helping elevate our academic awareness for our students. Students who embrace the athletic self or their creative sides, we know they pursue and they excel in academic. So I just want to tell you again, for all of you who are in this, you are helping our community, our college be vibrant and create a sense of pride in our shared achievements. When our students do well, we feel proud. So thank you. Talk about feeling proud. We're having some construction projects going on. I don't know if you've noticed. Our college campuses have been tore up from the floor up, as the kids like to say. And what I've really enjoyed about all of this, I took this one photo of the Reedley building because it talked about what we promised and what it actually delivered. And we are delivering on those promises in terms of our buildings. This just gives you an idea of our two oldest colleges, Reedley and Fresno. And this week, we're having a community event at West Fresno. The campus is opening up, so that's good, yes. On Friday, we're having a ribbon cutting at the Child Development Center in Reedley, yes. We're excited these buildings are coming online, and we haven't forgotten that Clovis, you're under construction right now. That building is coming up, right? And this fall will be the first time that our students in Madera will have full access to the Academic Village too, and we're excited by that. And if you think about the buildings, we have to talk a little bit about, well, who's going to be in these buildings and staffing. And I want to share a little bit of stuff. And again, I'm going to have all these slides shared with everybody so you have an idea of, because the print I'm about to show you, spoiler alert, is really small. So what we're trying to look at is the ratio of employees and where they're at, because I've been at every college and everybody's like, Fresno gets too many, Clovis has too many, Madera has too many, we don't have enough. I got the memo. So what we've done, well, I'm going to share what we've done over the last 2 years to try to help. What we do is we look at the FTS, which is in the far right corner. That's the FTS that each college earns. For example, Fresno City College, it's our largest college, they earn over about 55% of the FTS. They generate that revenue. And Madera, being our newest, they generate about a little over 9% of the overall revenue. So one metric is try to make sure that your revenue and your staffing are kind of in the same ratio. So this kind of shares where we're at. We have 2,400 employees, and the center talks about all of the employees, right? And you can see Fresno is now kind of where they should be. That doesn't mean you don't need more, I understand. Clovis is still a little understaffed. Reedley may be a little overstaffed, but I know you need people too. And Madera is probably right where they need to be, right-sized right now. Again, knowing we all need people. Now, when you see this, I know what you think, because I've been hanging out with faculty for a number of years. You say, yeah, that's just classified. Well, let's look at classified. So again, the right column is the FTS generation, and then the center column is the percentage of classified professionals for each of your colleges. And you'll see you're pretty close, with perhaps Reedley being a little, what we would say, overstaffed. But again, if you talk to people at Reedley, they would say, no, we need more, and I understand. This is just one metric of looking at things. When I first got here, it didn't look this good. It was a little more callywumpus. That's a technical term. Let's talk about what you all in this room really want to talk about, and that's faculty. So if you look at the number of faculty, and you look at, again, the FTS generation, which doesn't change, but if you look at the percentage of faculty based on that revenue, you'll see that some are a little bit higher, some are a little bit lower, but we're still pretty close to that ratio. And let me tell you how we got there. Over the last 4 years, our district has hired 168 I wish it was faculty, 168 employees. So, the yellow is last year. That was a big year, especially for Fresno City College. And we'll get to that in just a minute. Last year, we hired 40 faculty, and that was to help level set. Remember I said when I first got here, the ratios were a little off? We were able to help those ratios get to where they needed to be. So this is the breakout, 98 new faculty over the last 4 years. So I know what you're thinking, yeah, but what did the district get? Okay, I was on a campus, I know what it's like. We added, over the same period, 21 classified professionals, 3 managers. Clovis Community College, because we know that was a growing college, you can see by year the number of faculty that was added, the number of classified, 29 faculty over the last 4 years, for a total of 46 new employees. Fresno City College, again with that big bump last year, have 35 new faculty over the last 4 years, for a total of 44 new employees over the last 4 years. Reedley College, because we had to right size them, sorry Reedley, 9, but you still got some, so that's good. Dr. Buckley's like shooting arrows at me right now, I feel it. But let me share, we also did something else last year. You may remember the enrollment recovery faculty. Remember that? So this was in addition. We added 6 tenure track positions and 10 temporary full-time faculty. I'm gonna explain this a little bit more. So you'll see each of the logos and it shares where each college was at. So Fresno City College got 3 full-time tenured and 3 full-time temporary. That's important to watch because this next slide's gonna be fun. 3 full-time temporary. Clovis had 2 tenure and 3 full-time temporary. Madera got 1 full-time temporary and 2 full-time temporary. Reedley, sorry, didn't get any tenure, but you had 2 temporary positions. So what we did is we looked at those 10 instructional 1-year temps to see, did they have an impact in being able to help us meet our enrollment recovery goals? Because remember, we're still 2,745 FTS short, and eventually we're gonna have to pay the bills. So we wanna make sure we're getting those students in. Well, guess what? It worked. So this year, this year, I'm proud to announce that we'll be releasing 22 new instructional faculty positions. So those 10 temporary, non-tenure track positions will now convert into 10 tenure positions because it showed that students are coming and we can make that a tenure track position. So that breakout of the 10, Reedley now will get 2 tenure full-time track. Madera will get 2 tenure track, and Clovis and Fresno will get 3 tenure track. Because we can. You're welcome, Jerry. Here we go. And then we're also taking a little bit of a bet here and releasing another 12 full-time, non-tenure instructional positions. Now, I'll say this is a bit of the 22 new faculty and the additional faculty we had last year, you need to think about, we're still under where we were for the pre-pandemic, but we're overstaffed. That eventually will have to figure out how we're gonna do this. So I'm, as they say, do any of you play poker? Okay, so I'm betting, like they say, betting on the come, so I'm hoping that these students will literally come because I believe in the power of our instructors. I believe in the power of faculty. I believe in what you do each and every day, and what this means is we're investing $2.9 million in this investment in your ability to do your job well. So, 22 new faculty, on nearly $3 million. That's looking pretty good. So let's talk about what's ahead and how we're looking ahead. I want to thank, as we're coming together, we're looking at the 4 colleges will be going through their integrated facilities planning, because I know we're building new buildings, but we still have old buildings that need some love. Many of you have talked about how you'd like new faculty offices, or how our students need a new student union, or affinity space for our students to hang out. All of those things need to be planned. So we're beginning those work now. So in the next few months, you'll see a lot of meetings about integrated planning and our facility planning. But before we began that work with accreditation coming up, we wanted to look at our values, mission, and vision. And I just have to, again, say I'm incredibly grateful to this group. You'll see people, your names up there. Every college was involved. These individuals, they came together and they met every month. I think they might have even met bi-weekly a couple times, elbows and knees, and they cussed and discussed, and they looked at data, and then they talked with management, and then each college had these community forums, and they had students coming and to give them, what is it you like, what do you want to see, what do you want to see more of, what do you value? We did that at each one of our colleges, and students and community members came out. We did it at each college. And faculty and staff and students showed up and they told us what it is they'd like to see. What is it they aspire to? What do they value? Every college. And we're not done. But this is what that wonderful committee came up with. So at the center, when I looked at that, I kind of had a Homer Simpson moment. Well, duh. Of course we're student-centered. Everything we do here is for our students. But look at those values. Community. Stewardship, innovation, being equity-minded, looking at social justice, and of course, kindness. So what I'd like you to do now, because I love what our committee's done, but do any of you have phones? Can you take your phone out? Take your phone out. Okay, here we go, Don. Make sure this works. Going to the next slide. Whoa! Okay. So these are the values that are kind of new to us. We've always been student-centered. Kindness, community, stewardship, innovation. I'm curious, if you take your phone out and you look at that little code, now don't pull up Netflix. Okay, there we go. I'd like to know which one resonates with you. Which one do you feel is your most important value? Which one speaks to you? Is it innovation? It's too small, Don. Okay, the other thing we could do is go to poll.com/Carol Goldsmith 1222. Don, can you make it larger? Aw. No. What? Oh, you got to zoom in on your phone, they're saying. No, that's not saying. Okay. Okay, the other thing, you know what we could do? We could do it old school. Here we go. Okay, yeah, it's supposed to pop up on your phone. So let's do it this way. We'll do it old school. Do you still have your flags? If you believe kindness is your primary value that you vote as must, let me see kindness. How many of you like kindness? Okay, got about a third for kindness, okay. How many of you think community should be the core value because everything we do is for community? All right. Seeing another? There we go. Stewardship, being good stewards of our best product out there, which of course is our future students. How many of you think stewardship? People in the back? Okay. There's the steward folks. And now I have a feeling everyone's going to like this one. Innovation. Who doesn't want to be innovative? Round of applause for innovation. Okay. Now let's see how big of a crowd value we can get on this one because we've been talking about it for several years. Equity-minded, social racism, social justice, and ending racism. How many are for that? Okay. Thank you for bearing with me as we go through our technology glitch. We'll get this out to you. Again, I want to thank these individuals who came and worked every day and put these things together. And I would be remiss if I didn't share this part right here with you. This is the final draft of the district-wide vision mission that was developed by the Vision 2030 Commission. This draft was submitted to the Communication Council yesterday, and representatives of that group, that's classified professionals, our students, and our faculty, academic senate, and our labor partners all came together, and they said they're going to be releasing this as soon as they can, so all of you can have feedback on this final draft this coming few months. So as you can see, the bold sentence there, that first sentence is the vision. Can we just, again, thank our commissioner folks who come together, because wordsmithing something like this is beautiful and brilliant. Please give them a round of applause. It is absolutely, I have an opportunity to go see other colleges through accreditation. This one is probably one of the best written ones that I think reflects who we want to be and who we're striving to be. So again, if you're a commissioner, if you're on this commission, could you please stand up so we can thank you? Stand up, don't be brave, don't be shy. There we go, stand up, stand up. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. And then I want to end by saying, I firmly believe that there's no way that we can be student-centered without first meeting the needs of the people who work here. And do you agree? Right? Put the oxygen mask on you first, yes? So I know that many of you saw a number of photos when we first walked in. We need to recognize and celebrate our amazing faculty. The faculty that you saw on this, they were recognized by their peers and by outside organizations and even by the governor by being excellent in their field. So again, I want to thank you for all the work you do every day. I want to take a moment to celebrate the incredible work that you've done and that you're hopefully going to do, and I know you're going to do. So could we all give ourselves a round of applause for doing this work? And there's some new people. If you're new to State Center and you've been hired in the last, say, 18 months to 2 years, would you please stand? Stand up. If you're new, stand up. We got a lot of new people here. Stand up. Yes. Welcome. Welcome. Stay standing. Stay standing. For those of you who just received tenure this year or last year, did you just receive tenure last year or this year? Stand up. Stand up. You received tenure. Wonderful. Thank you. All right, now for the rest of us who've been here for a while, we need to make sure our new employees are successful. It's part of our shared responsibility to share with them how we work together for the betterment of our students and the communities we serve. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a rest of your day. It's going to be great. We're going to have some fun. Some of you will like it, some of you won't, and it's okay, because I'm just glad you're here. And I hope you like the breakfast burritos. We'll have a nice lunch. Stick around for lunch, because there's going to be some exciting announcements as well. So now I'm going to give it back over to Rico. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Goldsmith. All right, for those of you standing, if you want to take this opportunity, because we're going to be standing for a little while, if you want to get into a seat, this is a good time to do that. All right. So if I can ask Dr. Goldsmith to come back up and take your seat. Thank you. It is my pleasure to now introduce Secretary of California Labor and Workforce Development Agency, Stuart Knox. Secretary Knox has more than 28 years of experience in higher education, workforce, and economic development. In his position, he oversees 7 major departments, boards, and panels that serve California workers and employees with the vision of California at an economy that works for all. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Stuart Knox.
Thank you. Glad to be here. These comfy chairs. I feel like I'm at home.
I feel like I'm going to be sitting way back. Okay. Hello.
Hello. This is nice.
Well, thank you for making your trek to Fresno. We had an opportunity to talk a little bit before, and what's interesting, I don't think there's ever been a Secretary of Workforce and Department of Labor that has an experience like you. So could you maybe talk a little bit about your trajectory of how did you, when you're 2 or 5, did you want to be the Secretary of California Department of Labor and Workforce? How did that work?
No, I did not. I don't know I want it now. No, I'm kidding. No, it's good. It's a great question. I started in the community college system. And so...
Wait, you started where?
At the community college system, Yuba College up north, far up north. Small district. well, I started in workforce development as a GED instructor teaching adults that had lost their jobs. And so one of the key components for me was to really think about how we give back to community and also how to get people back to work quickly. And so I did that for about 2-3 years, and then the college picked me up to do one of their adult programs. And while I was doing that, they said, oh, there's this JTPA, if you're old enough to remember, Job Training Partnerships Act. Yeah, see, there's a few people old enough to remember, that we want to write for and run the program for the workforce board. I said, sure, I can help write the grant. So I wrote the grant. 3 weeks later, they called me and said, hey, we got the grant, do you want to be the director?
Sounds familiar.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the director, and then later became workforce board director for 4 different areas in the state of California, all the way from LA area all the way back to the far north state, and then was a health and human services agency director, worked for Calvert Community College as an executive there, and then also went to work for Governor Brown, worked for the Brown administration for 4 years. And then when Newsom came in, I thought I was going to exit. I was actually going to go back to probably the community college system, and I thought, well, I'll exit because usually those transitions, we get to exit out. And they called and they said, how would you like to be the Undersecretary of Labor? And so I said, yeah, that sounds amazing. So I was the Undersecretary for a little over 4 years, and then now the Secretary of Labor for the last 7 months. So finish out this administration, and then who knows, I might be back at a community college.
Well, we're always looking for talent. I'm just, it would be great if we could have you join us. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Your experience, I've had an opportunity to meet other people in your roles, and no one ever understood community colleges. And with your knowledge of working at a community college, and I know you even attended a community college, how do you think that shaped maybe your leadership a little bit differently, and how do you think that may change how some of those programs change?
Sure, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think for me, attending the community college and then having the opportunity to actually go onto a 4-year university and then be where I'm at today, all started with education and training. And that was also what I saw when I worked teaching GED to adults that had lost their jobs, how meaningful the education component and training is for that individual. And without that education or some documentation of training, how difficult as a caseworker I was, also basically as the GED instructor, for these folks to try to get jobs. If I didn't have any documentation of their work history, how hard that was for us to actually get people employed. And so I think from that perspective, and then working for the community college system is also putting together the pieces. We all know how this works in a community college system. It's like, when I got there, I ran the JTPA, then it was WIA program, but then it was, oh, we have money for independent living program, foster care youth. Oh, we have money for CalWorks and welfare to work program back in the day. Oh, we have money for this, so support services. So for us, it was starting to put together the pieces and see where we could best utilize the resources for the community college system using our federal dollars. So I think from my perspective as the labor secretary is really thinking about the systems and systems alignment. So we have about, I always say it's 10% of our funding. Our funding is fairly large because we also oversee EDD and state disability and workers' comp, things, small programs like that work really well apparently, but regardless. 10% of our funds is workforce, but it's about 80% of our work. And so how do we start to leverage the capacity and the resources that the community college system has of just the sheer size of the college system to better serve the students and our customers as well? And how do we align those resources in a much bigger and grander way? This governor's been amazing. He has put $2 billion in workforce.
Wait, did you say $2 billion?
$2 billion in workforce, yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's a big number. Previous to that, Governor Brown did about $50 million a year of general fund. And I'm talking general fund. So our funds usually for workforce is about $450 million federal, about $120 million of employment training panel, which is a tax on employers. And the rest of it has been basically just $50 million here, $50 million there. This governor has put in literally $2 billion into workforce systems in addition to our federal and other state resources. So, but I know that's going to end. It's going to end probably with my administration and his administration. How do we leverage the power and the resources of the community college system to make sure that, one, the students and the services that we provide, and we serve about 245,000 customers a year. Ours is a heavy case management system, as most of you know, heavy equity lens, making sure we serve the most in need customers. But how do we do this better with the community college system? And we did it. I think that's the other reality is like I figured it out generally. Could always do things better, of course. But we figured out a lot of really cool examples at the college of how to really work with the students and provide the wraparound services, provide transportation, provided childcare. We even had a food program. USDA, because we were also a rural community, we had a USDA grant where we provided food and healthy food options every Wednesday with our childcare provider with the college. So we also ran the Career Center for the college later. So those are examples of things I'd like to see is how do we embed either our career counselors with some of the community colleges. I still remember the day the president of the college came to me and said, I want you to run the Career Center. And I said, oh, I don't want your Career Center. I'm like, no, we have our Career Center, you have your Career Center, I don't want yours. And he's like, yeah, that's why I want you guys to run our Career Center. I was like, all right. So we went in and did an assessment, and really the assessment of the Career Center, nothing in defense of the Career Centers, but it was understaffed usually. We don't have a lot of money in the community college system for them. And so it was like, oh, let me see, I've got money for that. So we pumped in about, $60,000 a year. It wasn't a lot. And provided 2 counselors full-time at the Career Centers for those CTE courses. We also embedded those folks that would go actually out to those CTA courses, so they would have 1 to 2 semesters left. Those folks all got enrolled into our programs. We provided them wraparound services. We provided them with job placement services at the end and working with industry. Right. So those are just some ideas and thoughts.
There's a lot there. I know recently you were quoted as saying, California community colleges are a vital element in our workforce development system. And as a leading training provider, they equip students with in-demand skills and give them opportunity to thrive in the economy, which, by the way, I love that quote. But I know our faculty out here, because we have a lot of career technical faculty out here, but we also have a lot of general education faculty. And so, I know that we talked last night a little bit about the power of a post-secondary education leading to healthier and happy lives. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the role of the faculty member? If you're not in workforce, how does that impact?
How does it apply?
Yeah, how does it apply?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I can make anything about workforce development. I've said that my whole career is anything's about workforce development because without a job, there's not a lot left there unless you're an independently wealthy person and you're just going to college for the heck of it. Right. Most everybody's going to land in a job at some point after either their 2-year or their 4-year or 6 years, as my niece is, I think, on her 6th or 7th. She's getting her PhD, though. So, okay. But that, to me, is the job is the end result. And so how do we think about that journey with that job? We've had the conversation with faculty, and I was an acting dean at one point because my dean left, and so acting in the community college system went for 3 years, so I worked with the faculty quite a bit, and really, with the faculty, really thought through how do we have real life examples of the work relationship with what they're learning in the classroom. Right. And then also thinking about work-based learning, really looking at dual enrollments also with the high schools, and I know you guys are doing a lot of work on that as well. But it's like, how do you take that lifelong journey with the students so that our system, I always say we're, adult programs, our youth programs, and our dislocated worker programs are really kind of an offshoot of a missed opportunity, I think, for education of students who just didn't do well in either high school or college. And so they didn't go the pathway that we've all had the opportunity to go. And so how do we get them back into school? But we also have to relate to that, what their needs are going to be, which is also being employed part of the time. They're going to have childcare potential issues, and they're going to need that support and that wraparound services. So I just think from the heart of my faculty when I worked with them is just remembering, and they know this, is how important that person's life is, and just how there's a lot of tragedies in there, as we have all had tragedies in one way or another. But with the folks that we work with, there's just a lot of challenges that they've been faced with, and how do we best serve them?
Right. And I know we talked a little bit about last night about our economy and how community colleges really play an important role in that. We train the vast majority of our nurses and our first responders. And could you maybe talk about some of the exciting initiatives that you're looking forward to in the next couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So, part of the billions that the governor has put in place, a good portion of that's for healthcare. About 1.4, 1.5 billion is in actually the healthcare systems. Obviously, we learned with COVID there was a lot of capacity need, there was a lot of retirees, there was a lot of burnout. And we continue to have like stressors, as we all know, with hospitals closures and things like that, especially in this area, in this region. And so working with the Health and Human Services Agency, Dr. Galley and his administration with ours, to really put together how we put dollars out to actually have meaningful impact. And it was actually a really good conversation last night, because some of the things that we think are happening at the state level, at the local level, are actually not happening at the local level that we think. So it's always helpful to have that two-way conversation. But a good portion of the funds actually come out through the Health and Human Services Agency side, but we are the ones that direct the actual implementation of that. And so I can see the community colleges, as we all know, will play a critical role in those funding opportunities. We just put out we're putting out $30 million of $130 million to the adult side of the community college, really for English language learners, but it's also to get people that have into career pathways for healthcare, but it's also people that may have come to this country that have had experience in the healthcare sector, and how do you move them with some prior learning experience into a much faster model. So those are some just ideas we're thinking about.
Well, thank you. And I know we're all interested in prior learning and credit for prior learning, and there's a lot to work out. The state really hasn't figured out how they're going to fund that. I think everybody's like, that makes sense, but how does it work? I know you've had some conversations. Do you see that getting resolved anytime soon about how we might be able to do it? Because everybody around the room says, well, that makes sense, but how will it work?
How do we fund it? Yeah. I think I met with Dr. Christian yesterday. I had the opportunity in the morning. I came down here last night and had dinner, and yesterday morning I spent the good morning and the night before with Dr. Christian. I feel like I work more for the community colleges than I do the labor agency at this point, but that is a key component of what we're trying to figure out. The funding, I think, for now, we can probably do a lot through grants and other opportunities so that you would still have your maintenance of your current funding streams, but I do think it is important for us to think about how we would pilot some of those projects quick. I think the ag tech opportunity is a really good one for this area. I think some healthcare opportunities for here as well, using some of our money, so we could have some offsets potentially to do the work early. But I think there will have to be some legislative changes, and that's one of the things obviously we do in our world is, and I talked to the new chancellor this week about, the chancellor's office has been pretty active around legislative, but they usually are pretty also silent around legislation for the most part. And I think you'll see a change, I think, in a good way, of the way that our administration, with the governor's support, will look at ways that we can better do this with some legislative changes.
Well, that's wonderful, because I know here in our valley we have two things that we really care about, and that's healthcare. With the closure of Madera Hospital, it has been horrible for our community. It's been bad for our students. It's bad for everyone. And we also know that we want to take care of our farm worker population as we continue to feed the world. So later today, you'll be hearing some information about an amazing survey of our farm workers that I think will change the way we think about how we work with that population to help them reach their goals. And I know that data was kind of interested to you as well, because you do look at data quite a bit to make decisions, right?
We do, all day long. So we also oversee Labor Market Information Division. We work really closely with the Centers of Excellence and actually provide most of the data that actually the Centers of Excellence do a much better job of explaining than we do. But we're data-driven, and the governor is very data-driven, and ag is key to my heart. So I come from an ag background. I come from the North State. My mother's a cattle rancher. My partner's mother runs a rice ranch. So that is the heart of, I think, what we do in our economy for California. And so how do we better support our ag community? How do we better support the workers within the ag community? But also looking at the children of the ag workers, too. That was the other component that I think is, if there's other opportunities outside of ag, and I know I get beat up on this a little bit once in a while, but as ag transitions to more an automated workforce, or mechanization of the workforce, you're going to see less and less jobs potentially within that industry anyway. What is our opportunities to start working with those students early, quickly, and move them into healthcare, into other job opportunities within our local economies? So those are just some thoughts around how important that is to us and how we're going to also have additional resources for ag and healthcare coming up.
Well, I think that's great. I know a number of our faculty have been involved in the Ag Tech project, and we're going to hear more about that today. And I got the 5-minute warning from off the side. So I wanted to ask you two questions, if I could get to.
Yeah.
One, I'll ask, of all the initiatives, you talked about a $2 billion budget from the governor. What is the newest thing that is kind of exciting for you? And you're thinking, this is really innovative. This is something that we can help, as with colleges, can help you with that goal.
So it's probably, which the governor hates the name, so we're changing it, but it's the SURF program, the Community Economic Resilience Funds. I actually helped write the legislation for the governor. He wanted to do something big and bold. It's $600 million. It goes to 13 regions in the state of California. It links economic and workforce development together. I think the community colleges are key for this. I think the colleges hold such a critical role for our local economies. Whether it's just even thinking about the payroll that we generate from a community college system, but also thinking about how we can better use solar energy, not just about the training of solar energy, but what can your community colleges play a role for that as hubs too? Really thinking about how your community colleges play not the workforce development role, but the economic development role within your communities. You're doing it today. You're bringing all these people to in the middle of Fresno and going to spend money. That's economic development, right? But that is probably one of our biggest programs that the governor's most excited about. And how do we make sure that these 13 regions, we get it right? We have about 3 years left in the administration. We want to hand off to the next administration a blueprint for the state of California to better do economic and workforce development. I really want the colleges to be the center of that. I think that's important.
I think it's important too, and I know our local SURF region here is, the convener of that is the Central Valley Foundation, which we're a proud partner of, and we've been very involved in the SURF project. So we're hopeful we'll have more voice at the table, which is always important. I'm going to end on one question that you might not be ready to answer. There's all this promise about education, and too often we've seen a lot of our private post-secondaries crash and burn. For example, Heald College, remember them? They closed, and then they came to our colleges to be able to finish what they started at a private post-secondary. And of course, ITT, remember when they closed? And they came, and we tried to help them as well. While not in college, here locally, we have this company called Bitwise, and it stranded employees, which we're trying to hire some of them, but it also stranded some apprentices. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, awful scenario for this area, and actually a good part for the state of California. So, the state, we have what we call rapid response funds. It's to help with dislocations, and I really appreciate the community college stepping up to actually look at what's the opportunity for the apprentices. Apprentices is a massive undertaking that we've taken on for the governor as well, with the 500,000 promise by 2029. We had funds actually allocated to go to Bitwise. Luckily, we didn't allocate them before they filed bankruptcy, and so we've held the funds. But with between the rapid response funds, so I think right now we have applications for almost $3 million, approximately, working with your administration, with the chancellor here, and also working with our local workforce board. So we're looking at those applications now. We will be funding a good portion of those applications very shortly to be able to ramp back up that apprenticeship training program, working with your community college to do so.
Can you say that one more time? Because I want to make sure they heard that.
There'll be money available for apprenticeship training programs for your community college, yes.
So our colleges, once again, are not going to let people be stranded.
Yes, exactly.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, give Stuart Knox a round of applause. He's one of us. I'm supposed to hand off the microphone to Rico now. This is like a relay. And for those of you who are going to the 9:30 meeting, I understand that we are going to be exiting, but your next speaker is amazing, and you're taking over. So here you go. Have a great session.
I'm just going to frame it.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Goldsmith. Thank you, Secretary Knox, for participating in our convocation and for the information you shared. We are honored to have you with us today.
I'll be right there.
So, ensuring equity is a goal for all of us who serve students. I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Frank Harris III. Dr. Harris and Dr. Luke Wood founded the Community College Equity Assessment Lab, a national research and practice lab that partners with community colleges to support their capacity in advancing outcomes for students who have been historically underserved in education, particularly students of color. Today, his topic is creating a culturally affirming experience in the classroom. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Harris.
All right. Hello. Good morning. It is always always a pleasure to visit the Central Valley. Thank you for having me. I hear the weather's down to the low 90s, so I like to think that I brought some good weather with me here from San Diego, right? But first and foremost, I want to start by thanking Dr. Carol Goldsmith for her leadership and for inviting me to be with you today. I also want to acknowledge Trustee Johnson and any other trustee that has joined us today. Thank you for your leadership and your advocacy for students and for this wonderful district. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge the 4 college presidents in the district: Clovis President Dr. Kim Armstrong, Fresno City President Dr. Robert Pimentel, Madera President Dr. Angel Reyna, and last but not least, an SDSU alum, Reedley President Dr. Jerry Buckley. Thank you. Second. There we go. So as you can see, I literally have 5 jobs at my home institution at SDSU, but most of the insights that I'll share with you today comes from the work that I've done over the past 12 years as co-director of the Community College Equity Assessment Lab. And through my work at SEAL, I've had the opportunity to learn from students and colleagues about what does it really take to advance equity and student success, starting with creating safe and welcoming and inclusive environments that are conducive to student success, and to building the capacity of all educators to serve students equitably and responsibly. And so that said, there's going to be 2 objectives that inform our discussion today. I'm going to spend some time unpacking some events that have happened over the past 3 years that have had an impact on higher education and for the past 3 years and in the foreseeable future. And then lastly, I'm going to spend most of my time unpacking several strategies that I've put together. So 10 strategies I'm going to share with you that I think are going to be very important as we think about what it is we need to do to continue advancing equity and student success. And so I want to begin by sharing, I think we are all very keenly aware of how COVID-19 not only changed higher education seemingly overnight, but it also had a profound impact on the entire world. And so many people lost loved ones, some lost their employment, businesses, and their homes, to name a few. And we also know that COVID has had a deleterious effect on our health and wellness, both physical and mental, and many of our students and colleagues are still struggling with anxiety and other health-related consequences from the pandemic. And because we also know that disproportionately impacted communities were amongst the most hardest hit by the pandemic, students who are disproportionately impacted in education are overrepresented among those who left community colleges and have not re-enrolled because of the pandemic. And shortly after the pandemic, we witnessed the tragic murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and we learned of the death of Breonna Taylor, and there were many others, far too many to name. And this sparked national protests and calls for accountability across the world. Colleges and universities and businesses and other organizations across the country released statements of solidarity and promised to do more to address systemic racism in their institutions and to do right by people of color. And of course, today we have the benefit of hindsight, and it has shown us that these were empty promises in many cases. And now we find ourselves immersed in a context in which race relations appears to be more strained than they have been since the Civil Rights Movement. And we've also experienced record rates of inflation over the past 3 years. In the year 2020, the rate of inflation was about 1.4%. It rose to 7% in 2021 and decreased slightly to 6.5% in 2022, and now stands at about 5% in 2023. And record inflation has been directly attributed to a huge spike in the cost of living, where food and clothing and shelter and healthcare and transportation and other essential basic needs have become far too expensive for many Americans to afford. And in a place like California, where the cost of living is already incredibly high, the impact of inflation is experienced more intensely here than in other parts of the country. And of course, we also know that this means the cost of enrolling in college has become far too high for students who perhaps have the most to gain from it. So even with financial aid, like the California Promise Grant and other supports that the prospect of working less to attend school while the cost of living continues to rise is a sacrifice that far too many cannot afford to make. And it has not been helpful, that some of us have found it important, to launch vicious attacks on higher education by questioning the value and the worth of a college degree and suggesting that college is not necessary to gain meaningful employment and that pays a livable wage. And of course, we know, being higher education professionals, that a college degree or certificate is absolutely essential in being able to compete and make it into competitive industries and markets. And then we also know that these same folks have also attacked diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, as well as ethnic studies and critical race theory, claiming that these efforts in areas of study should not be supported or taught. And then finally, we all know that the Supreme Court has made some recent rulings that have gutted reproductive rights, have made it legal to discriminate against the LGBTQ population on the basis of religion, and have rendered race-conscious admissions unconstitutional. They also rejected the Biden administration's loan forgiveness program, which many students and families, perhaps even some of us in this room today, were counting on for much-needed financial relief. And all of these issues have a direct and negative impact on our enrollment, student success, mental health and wellness, and campus climate. And so, along the same lines, when we do a quick scan of the 4 colleges in the district student equity plans, it helps to reveal how disproportionate impact shows up in the State Center Community College District. We see significant disproportionate impact on student enrollment, persistence, completion, and transfer in some cases. And what you see here are the groups that have identified as being disproportionately impacted on each indicator in the 4 colleges' equity plans. Across the 5 indicators and the 4 colleges, Hispanic students, the district's largest racial ethnic group, shows up 14 times. Black students show up 16 times. Male students of any race also show up 16 times as well. And clearly, we have very important work to do if we're going to achieve our goal of eliminating equity gaps and disproportionate impact. And in order to do so, all educators, everyone in this room this cannot be achieved if educators bring deficit mindsets or perspectives about disproportionately impacted students into their educational practice. Instead, to achieve equity and student success, we all must approach the work from an equity-minded and an institutional responsibility perspective. Of course, we know the concept of equity-mindedness was developed by Dr. Estella Ben-Simone, an education researcher and advocate whose work has played an essential role in guiding educational policies that are aligned with and advance equity. According to Dr. Ben-Simone, equity-mindedness is comprised of 5 core principles that educators must embrace to ensure equity. That being evidence-based, and that equity-minded educators use disaggregated data in order to reveal hidden patterns of inequity and use the data to guide their sense-making and action. Equity-minded educators are also race-conscious, and that they acknowledge that educational opportunity in the United States is heavily stratified on the basis of race, with students in communities of color having less access to higher education and the resources that are necessary to succeed within it. They also see students' racial identities and experiences as key sources of knowledge and assets that can be leveraged to facilitate their learning and their success. Equity-minded educators are also institutionally focused in that they demand institutional accountability for student success and believe that student success is determined by what institutions do to meet students' learning needs rather than exclusively on students' efforts, as is often assumed. They are also systematically aware They recognize that inequity is a systemic problem that is reflected in nearly every social institution that is designed to serve students and communities, including our K-12 system, our healthcare system, our workforce, our justice system, and the justice system, to name some. And these systems have a long history of disproportionate impact when it comes to serving priority students and communities. And then finally, equity-minded educators are equity advancing. They are committed to advancing equity in every educational space in which they find themselves. They bring an equity-minded perspective to their classrooms, their student services work, the committees they serve on, and their community work, and in every other aspect of their roles as educators. And now, what I would like to do is use the remainder of my time to share 10 strategies that we can all employ to center equity, critical cultural competence, and cultural relevancy into the teaching and learning experiences that we oversee. And while most of my focus here will be primarily on what occurs in the context of instruction, everything that I share can be easily applied to serving students outside of the classroom. Collectively, the goals of these strategies will be to challenge students to maximize their potential while conveying high expectations of them, supporting students in meeting these expectations, and while consistently communicating authentic care for their well-being and their success. And all of the strategies come from the work that my colleagues and I in the Community College Equity Assessment Lab have been doing in collaborations with districts much like the State Center Community College District and colleges like Clovis and Fresno and Madera and Reedley for more than a decade. First strategy, we must be intrusive. Being intrusive essentially means that we take proactive steps to support students. When we're intrusive, we do not wait for students to ask for help or invite us to support them. Instead, we take a proactive approach to doing so. Remember, seeing students' performance as an indicator of our effectiveness as educators is a central aspect of equity-mindedness. Thus, we need to ask ourselves, what information and resources will students need in order to be successful? And in response, we need to make sure students have access to this information and the resources before they actually need them. We also need to model approaches to the course that will lead to their success. For example, note-taking is one of the most important skills we can have as learners. However, we all know that there are literally hundreds of different ways to take notes, and some note-taking strategies work better in some courses than they do in other courses. And finally, I also suggest that you take some time early in the course to demonstrate to students how to take notes for your classes, provide them examples. You can do the same things for course readings and preparing study guides for the course. The key point here is to not leave students guessing and wondering what would they need to do to be successful. Next, we must be relational. Authentic relationships between students and faculty that are grounded in trust and mutual respect and authentic care are the foundations of student success. We have learned from our work that these relationships are far more likely to be established when the educator takes on the responsibility of creating the conditions for them to emerge. And as educators, we can all attest to the transformational impact that relationships can have on a student's trajectory. Now, unfortunately, disproportionately impacted students rarely enjoy relationships with educators that have a positive impact on their experiences and their success. And when we ask students of color, for example, to describe the relationships they have with educators, we're often met with looks of confusion and bewilderment, which are followed by statements like, there is no relationship, or I don't have one, or my professors are really not interested in having a relationship with me. I just go to class and leave as soon as it's done. And now I can understand that it can be incredibly challenging to build relationships with every student you teach, especially when we're teaching online like we've all been doing for the better part of the past 3 years. However, it is important that we do what we can to create a sense of community in our courses. And we can start that by humanizing ourselves. Maybe record a short video that can be viewed at the beginning of class to let students know who you are, where you come from, And what do we love most about teaching at Clovis or Fresno or Madera or Reedley? And we can also share other relevant details about ourselves, like our personal hobbies, our favorite books, movies, activities we enjoy doing with ourselves or our families and friends. And while most of these might seem like trivial details, they actually give students a sense of who we are as people and allow us to be more approachable, and we can also invite students to do the same thing. We must also be mindful about the language that appears in our course syllabi, as it sets the tone for the relationships that will be established between us and our students. Language that is rigid and punitive and suggests to students that we do not believe in them, or we don't trust them, or we're not invested in their success is not helpful. The language in our syllabus should reflect a tone that is both validating and empowering. Next, we must be culturally relevant and affirming. Being culturally relevant and affirming draws from the work of Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings and other scholars who've made important contributions to knowledge in this area. Scholars who study culturally relevant teaching also contend that it is important to center diverse students in every aspect of the course: the curriculum, the selected readings and texts, guest speakers, and even assessment, to name a few. But we can also do things like acknowledge the intellectual contributions of people of color in the field. So for example, Gladys Mae West, the Black mathematician whose work has contributed to the development of global positioning systems. Or Victor Newman Lauda, who was a Latino mathematician. Or Ellen Ochoa, an aerospace engineer who in 1993 became the first Latina to travel to space. And then there's Susan Picati, who was Native American and made important contributions to medicine, to name some. We must be very intentional in helping students make connections between the content we're teaching and the issues and experiences and challenges that are present in their daily lives. But above all, when you take the time to affirm students' identities in the classroom, it lets them know that you not only care about their learning, but you also value who they are as people and their lived experiences. Fourth, we must be equity-centered. And we must be equity-centered in our teaching, in our learning, and all the support that we offer students. But what exactly does that look like in the context of teaching and learning? One, we have a course that's rooted in an ethos that prioritizes community and collaboration as opposed to competitiveness. Students and instructors have the opportunities to be both teachers and learners. A range of strategies are used to assess student learning. A range of pedagogies are used to teach, and relationship building, and intrusivity, and validation, and humanizing practices, and race consciousness are all embedded in the course. We also make sure that course policies related to grading and attendance, and participation, and any required texts, and how assignments are submitted do not further disadvantage disproportionately impacted students. These are just a few examples. Being equity-centered in the context of teaching and learning also means paying very close attention to digital equity. The pandemic was a jolting reminder of how much the digital divide has continued to widen, even as our society has become more reliant on technology to communicate and take care of our daily routines and activities. Digital equity is not just about making sure that every student has a device that would allow them to access the course or the campus, but it also means making sure that every student has the technology they need, the technological knowledge they need to connect and engage seamlessly and to make meaningful contributions within virtual learning spaces. And this will require some scaffolding, particularly for students who may have been away from higher education or formal learning for long periods of time. Next, we must be race conscious. Recall from our earlier conversation about equity and equity-mindedness that being race conscious is a core aspect of being equity-minded. And one of the most important ways we can be race conscious in our work with students is to recognize how educational access and opportunities in the United States has always been stratified by race, both historically and contemporarily. So for example, we know that in the K-12 context, schools that serve predominantly white and affluent families tend to have the most experienced and credentialed teachers, have access to the most rigorous curricula, have the most up-to-date facilities, and provide students with transformational learning experiences like internships and field trips abroad. So in some ways, community colleges play an essential role in closing the opportunity gap between racially minoritized students and their white peers. Yet at the same time, Tadayoso's community cultural wealth theory helps us recognize the invaluable cultural wealth that is often unrecognized by educators, like aspirational capital, which describes communities of color's abilities to always be hopeful and to envision positive futures for themselves and their families, despite being consistently challenged by systemic oppression. And familial capital, which is the cultural bonds, and histories, and knowledge, and the traditions that are passed down across generations. And resistant capital, which captures communities of color's courage and resilience to resist racism and patriarchy and other forms of oppression in ways that enable them to sustain the core of who they are. The question for us is, how do we intentionally design experiences for students that enable them to recognize their cultural wealth, the cultural wealth that they possess, but also leverage it in ways that can facilitate their success in education and beyond? This is what it means to be race conscious. We also have to be responsive. And we all know what it means to be responsive, and can all recall times of frustration when someone we really need did not provide a timely response to our concern. And one of the key lessons we've learned from our work with community colleges over the years is that students sees an instructor or even an institution's responsiveness as a measure of their own value and self-worth within that institution. And I know all of us are working very hard to manage so many demands of our time and attention. That said, we must be sure to prioritize our students by responding to their needs and concerns in the most timely manner possible. Be clear with students about how to best connect with you and by when they should expect a response or to know that you're available. Now, this does not mean that you need to have a 24/7 open door policy. That's not desirable nor realistic. But it does mean that when a student contacts you, try your very best to respond within 24 hours, and maybe sooner on the days leading up to an exam or the due date for a major assignment. There's all sorts of tools and resources that are available to us, like GQs and email templates and filters that can help automate responses to inquiries that come up often. And I'm sure that there are some emerging technologies as well. But no matter what, let's try to be as personal and humanistic as possible when responding to students and their concerns. Our next strategy is to be validated. Of course, we know that the concept of validation in education comes from the work of Dr. Laura Rendon while she was a professor at Cal State University, Long Beach. Validation theory is now one of the most widely applied theories in student success, research, and practice. And according to Rendon, non-traditional students need validation, which is defined as an enabling, confirming, and supportive process initiated by in and out of class agents that foster academic and interpersonal development. Validating agents are faculty and staff and other individuals in a student's life who provides much needed encouragement, support, and access to resources and information. We know that many of our students who've been disproportionately impacted in education have been led to believe that they are not, quote, college material, thus helping students recognize that they are smart and fully capable and can achieve their academic, career, and life goals as a gift that keeps on giving in education. And I can think of so many times when I personally have benefited from validation from an educator or an advisor and other key folks in my educational journey. Validation can help counter much needed self-doubt and insecurity that has a subtle yet profound impact on a student's confidence and ultimately their success. And we know that validation is incredibly important during times of uncertainty, when students are questioning if they should be in school rather than working more or doing something else. And with all the negative rhetoric about the value of education that is dominating our national headlines today, we need to be very intentional in validating our students, both in terms of what they're capable of achieving and in terms of their decision to enroll in the State Center Community College District. Next, let's be empowering. One of the most important things we can do as educators is to empower students. Being empowering essentially means helping students discover their gifts and their talents as learners, discovering their voices, and helping them use both to impact their families and communities in positive ways. When students are empowered, they take on greater ownership and responsibility for their learning and are much more likely to embrace an internal locus of control. When they do well, they are likely to attribute their success to factors that were fully within their control, like their study habits and their preparation as examples, rather than externalizing their success by suggesting that they got lucky or that the professor took it out easy on them. But this also means that students are much more likely to take ownership when things don't go as well as they hoped or expected. They may say, hey, I need to plan or prepare better, or something to that effect. Empowered students are also willing to reach out for support when they need it and utilize the resources that are afforded to them because they believe they deserve them. So a big takeaway from this strategy is to consistently remind students that they have something to contribute to everyone's learning experience and that both their presence and their perspectives are valued. Remind them of this when you talk to them. Leave notes when you give them feedback on their assignments. And try to end every interaction you have with them with something empowering to say. Next, it's important for us to be learner-centered in our teaching. So for example, most community college students are adult learners, which means that they're more likely than not to be attending part-time, working full-time, and have significant life experiences and responsibilities that compete for their time and attention. Now, this does not mean that they're not committed to their studies or that they don't appreciate the opportunity to study with you. But it does mean that we have to design a learning experience that takes this into account into the lived experiences of adult learners. Malcolm Knowles' principles of adult learning provide some good guidance on how we can do this. And Knowles tells us that experience is an adult learner's greatest learning resource. Thus, we must find ways for adult learners to leverage their lived experiences in ways that facilitate their learning. And we also know that adult learners respond better to intrinsic motivators, like having a genuine interest in the content, or self-satisfaction than they do to extrinsic motivators, like grades and other extrinsic rewards. And finally, we need to ask ourselves, how can we assess student learning in ways that are aligned with their learning strengths? So for example, some students may be better able to demonstrate their learning in a written paper or oral presentation than they can on a multiple choice exam. And so being learner-centered means that utilizing a range of strategies to assess student learning rather than only relying on one or a few. Now this last strategy is for you. It's important for us to be kind to ourselves by practicing what my colleague and friend and brother, Dr. J. Luke Wood, and I call radical self-care. Most of us come from generations where working nonstop until you drop was the norm. But these past 3 years have shown us that we can ill afford to continue to do that. This means that we must take the time we need to rest and recover and to prioritize things that sustain us and allow us to show up as our best selves. Exercising regularly, eating a good healthy diet, starting your day with a prayer or meditation, or taking the time you need to stay connected with family and friends and taking vacations are all examples of things that we can do to prioritize our health and our wellness and our self-care. And when we practice good self-care, it allows us to think more clearly and to manage the day-to-day stressors and pressures that come with being a professional educator in the present context. And for those of you who are managers, making sure you model self-care for the colleagues you supervise and encouraging them to take care of themselves is also important. And in your one-on-ones, asking them, what are they doing to prioritize their self-care? And so with that, I want to say thank you. I want to wish everyone a very, very successful 2023-2024 academic year. Again, it is always a pleasure to be with colleagues in the State Center Community College District, and I hope to get the opportunity to engage with you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Harris, for that. We're going to take a little break, so I don't want to lose you. I want you to stay in the room if you can. We'll give you about 7 minutes, bio break if you need it, but then be back here for the second half, and then we'll get started again. All right, we did it earlier today, but if you can hear me, clap your hands once. If you can hear me, clap your hands twice. If you can hear me, clap your hands 3 times. All right, it worked a little bit better earlier than it did now, but we're going to get through and move on. So, we all know how important it is to remove stigmas around seeking assistance for emotional and mental health issues. Here, from the Central Valley Community Foundation, from the director of the DRIVE initiative, welcome Artie Padilla.
All right, good morning. Thank you for allowing us to give you a little bit of some information. So yeah, Artie Padilla, Central Valley Community Foundation. In 2017, a handful of us created the Fresno County Trauma and Resilience Network. We have been doing a lot of trainings, workshops to support CVOs and institutions to become a more trauma-informed, resilience-based county. So we are going to be jumping into a video that's going to highlight one of our community colleagues, Ashley Hernandez. This video was created by the Department of Behavioral Health, was showcased with about 9 other short clips at the Tower Theater a couple of months ago. Maybe some of you saw those, but it really highlights the resilience that a lot of us have internally and what our community resilience looks like. So let's watch that video. A great story, a story that we're trying to duplicate all over the county with all of our families. So proud of Ashley. She has, through her work and just through her own leadership, become a strong, amazing example in her leadership in our community. So let's hear from, we're going to hear from Ashley Hernandez, and she's going to be having a conversation with some of our colleagues from the Trauma and Resilience Network. Ashley Hernandez.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I'd like to also invite Dr. Felipe Mercado and Dr. Sheila Thomas to the stage. And as they're getting seated, I just wanted to share how exciting it is to be here for me. It's like a full circle moment, because as I was driving on my way over here, I was thinking, wow, it's been 12 years since I attended Fresno City College. And during that time, I actually was academically disqualified. And it wasn't because I wasn't smart enough to be a student, or because I didn't have the determination or the commitment to finish my education. It was because I had to choose between, do I go to class today, or do I go to work to support myself, to pay my rent? And that was the decision I think many students have to make every single day as they're navigating through Fresno and what we experience, especially when we have histories like my own of coming from a family with a lot of trauma, where you feel as an obligation to support your family network. I'm excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about the Trauma and Resilience Network. And to finish that story, I actually returned because I set a meeting with President Tony Cantu. He took a meeting with me as one of his students, 15 minutes on his schedule. And I had told him a little bit about my story, and he allowed me to return to Fresno City College on academic probation. So for all the faculty, thank you. For all the faculty and the administrators that are here today, I just want to say, take that 15-minute meeting, listen to your students' stories, because you never know what impact you can make, and maybe they can return to tell their story as well. So just wanted to share that little tidbit. So as we're talking about poverty and we're talking about students, I actually have a question for Dr. Thomas. She's been a longtime member of our Trauma and Resilience Network. And our first question is, one of the key issues you've mentioned in the past is the impact poverty and its role in the area of trauma. Can you unpack how that might manifest in our students today?
Thank you so much for that question. So the issue with poverty is it impacts a person on multiple levels, right? So we start thinking about their housing, we start thinking about their food, we start thinking about their transportation, right? And we start thinking about their responsibilities that they have. So when these students are coming into your classes and they're struggling with things like poverty, food insecurity, housing instability, right? They're having to make decisions like how Ashley was talking about, what decisions they're gonna make and how they're gonna spend their time. So if they have a homework assignment that's gonna take 5 to 6 hours, they're gonna have to decide between doing that 5 or 6 hours on their homework assignment or taking that extra shift in order to cover the bills or buy food. So I think that's something that we can be aware of when we're thinking about the deadlines and if we can be flexible. And there was a speaker who came on before us who was talking about being intrusive, right? So if you allow yourself to ask these questions like, I noticed you've been turning in some things late or missing some things, what might I do to support you, right? And try to be more flexible with things like that. Or even on your syllabus, have like a list of like local food pantries or assistance with housing, just tack that onto the back, right? That way, if students are embarrassed or anything like that, they don't have to ask, it's already there.
I love that idea, yes. Putting those things on your syllabus, and then also just thinking about making yourself open. When we think about that whale that Dr. Carol Goldsmith showed, and she said, kindness, equity-minded, community, those are all things that you can bring to your classroom to help your students become resilient. Okay, so our next question is for Dr. Mercado. As we think about the impacts of trauma and toxic stress, what do administrators and educators need to know about self-compassion and how it relates to their work in academia?
Well, good morning, everybody. You know, when I think about this question and I think about self-compassion, I think about getting onto the airplane. You know, a lot of times when you get on the airplane, they talk about, you know, putting on the oxygen mask. And, you know, your first impulse is always, you know, I'm going to put the oxygen mask on my child before I put it on myself. But what we hear from, you know, the stewardess is that we got to put the oxygen mask on ourselves, because if we can't rescue ourselves, we can't help anybody else. So when it comes to this work of trauma as an educator and as a leader, it's really important for us to understand how to put on our oxygen mask before we go out there and help other people. There's times that we're burnt out, we're exhausted, but the system and even sometimes the way that society is, we haven't really learned how to take care of ourselves. So what self-compassion really offers is a way for us to treat ourselves like we would treat our best friends, for us to really have that voice inside of us, to really, for it to be self-kind. You know, a lot of times, you know, when things go bad, you know, that voice comes on, whether you're a leader or an educator, and sometimes, you know, that voice isn't good. And it's very hard for us to start to think about, you know, how do we start to come down from that voice? And then another component of self-compassion is for us to really start to look at how we don't over-identify with situations, right? So a lot of times when a situation happens, we feel like we're the only ones. And with COVID, you know, we've had this epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And so for over the past 2 years, you know, as human beings, you know, a lot of us have felt, you know, this loneliness and this isolation. And so for us to be able to understand that a lot of people feel like this, and for us to start to find spaces to have conversations, to start to understand, you know, how as a society do we navigate what we're all going through, right? And how do we have the self-compassion to do the right thing? And what self-compassion really is for us to start to understand as leaders and educators that sometimes, even for ourselves, right, we might not have the capacity to help all these things that are happening with trauma. So that's why we really have to look into, you know, our ecosystems and other different avenues for us to really start to alleviate all the different conditions that we're seeing. But it starts with ourselves first, because if we're not looking internally, a lot of the things that are going to happen externally are going to be bad. So the better that we can look internally and start to change those conditions, right, the better that we can help other people, especially those that need our help the most.
Yes, and especially as we think about working with community college students, right? That's every walk of life from Fresno County, which is amazing to think about. But we also know that that can come with a lot of trauma and a lot of experiences that could feel triggering. So in counseling, we call it transference, and especially when you're feeling burnt out as a faculty member and there's so many things on your list, it's hard to take that meeting with a student and to listen to all of the things. But as you practice self-compassion, that's where you'll find more room, your cup will feel fuller, and you'll be able to serve the full student in and outside of this classroom. Okay, so next we have a question again for Dr. Sheila Thomas. We just heard about self-compassion. Let us extend this to compassion for our students. Please share how those in higher education could have compassion for our students.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for starting off with self-compassion, right? Because when your own personal cup is full, you can start filling up other people's cups, right? So when we're thinking about compassion for others, that starts changing how you're viewing situations, right? So instead of coming to a student and just being like, well, you're failing the class, right? Compassion helps you start asking more questions. Like I said earlier, how can I be of service? What can be done to assist you? What are your circumstances, right? And so when you start thinking about that, you become more effective in terms of helping that student reach their goals.
Yes, I love it. And then our next question is for Dr. Mercado. You have mentioned in the past that educators can build a culture of support. Can you expand with your own experience?
Yeah, I think that as educators and as leaders, right, and I think as educators, right, just because we don't have the title of a leader, you're a leader every day because you're helping other people, find a path. And when I think about this, right, a lot of our work is done in silos, right? A lot of times, things that are going on inside our classroom, as leaders, sometimes the analogy is it's lonely at the top, and we don't have these conversations. Even in our culture, right, we're taught to not have certain conversations, to keep things bottled in. So I think the more that we're able to create ecosystems and spaces where we can be safe and have trusting conversations and to really start to figure out that where there's a lot of common humanity going on, that we're all going through a lot of the same kind of trials and tribulations within a system, and for us to come together and to talk about those trials and tribulations and come with some solutions, right, and get leadership on board and get educators on board, and that's how we start to make a movement. A lot of these conditions, a lot of these circumstances have been in place for years, and it's up to us as people to organize and have conversations for us to change the conditions. If not, the conditions are going to continue to go on, and they're not going to change. So it's really us that we're being waiting for. When they say, we're waiting for the leader, nobody's going to come to Fresno and drop a magic wand and make it right. We're the ones who are going to make it right. And it starts with having conversations with each other and figuring out, the challenges that are going on. And for us to really start to address those challenges, bring the resources, bring the solutions in order for us to have a better community. If not, this is going to go on forever because, it's like Einstein's theory of insanity, right? So that's what I would have to say about that.
Yes, and we have a little bit of time. We thought 30 minutes was going to be short. So Dr. Mercado, you talked a little bit about creating an ecosystem. Can you give us some tips on how to do that? Like, what are some basic things we can do today?
Some basic tips is I know we all have department meetings. So really starting to develop a culture within our department where we can just start talking about different things that are going on, but also bringing solutions. What are solutions that we could bring? I know a lot of times, even I've been guilty of it, when I've been in certain roles that, you see things and you kind of see them a certain way, and it's really easy to get negative. So it's okay to talk about the negative, but let's bring a solution. So let's start to have department meetings and meetings where, we can have discussions where, there's issues, but let's also bring some solutions. And then how do we have conversations here? This is beautiful, right? There's all the state centers that are together. So I know there's commonality that are across the board and, various subjects and various departments. So how do you go from your department now to the larger community? And then from there, right, how do you start to change policy and how do you start to get leadership on board and really start to create these movements? If we're really about diversity and equity, let's start using the words and let's start creating the actions, right? Let's start making things actionable.
Yes. So just curious for you in the audience, how many of you implement trauma and resilience into your department meetings? Raise of hands. Or you have flags, raise of flags. How many of you would like to begin to implement trauma and resilience into your meetings? Ooh, I see lots of flags. Well, this is our plug. So Dr. Sheila Thomas, can you tell us a little bit about how folks can get incorporated into the Trauma and Resilience Network?
Okay. So the Trauma and Resilience Network focuses on building the capacity of organizations in Fresno to reach different people who have experienced trauma. So whether that has to do with violence or being impoverished or having mental health conditions, homelessness, so on and so forth. We aggregate as many community-based organizations as we can in order to start sending out information into the community about those services, and we also provide trainings for those community-based organizations or CBOs about the impact of trauma. So we talk about like toxic stress, we talk about ACEs, and things like that. So if you are interested in joining our monthly meeting, I think there's going to be an email sent out after this that's going to have the information for you to contact, and you can come on in.
Yes, and what I love about the Trauma and Resilience Network is that it's so cross-sector. So there is definitely space for education and higher ed. There's also doctors and nurses and community-based organizations. We've even have residents that are involved. So there's definitely an open space for anyone who wants to come and learn. You will receive a follow-up email with our communication, how to get connected. And that closes up the end for us. Thank you so much for your time. Please stay connected.
Take care.
All right, well, thank you so much from us to the network and also to the Fresno County Behavioral Health. And then we'd like to specifically thank Ashley Hernandez, Dr. Felipe Mercado, and Dr. Sheila Thomas, and Artie Padilla for being here today. Let's give them another round of applause. As we all know, a barrier to higher education can be cost, related not to just tuition and fees, but also learning resources like books and materials. We are now joined by Amanda Tainter, a faculty coordinator for instructional design at Reedley College, who will share what she's learned on her open educational resources journey. Please welcome Amanda Tainter.
I feel like that's just my ECE folks out there making noise. So, yes, right now my title is Faculty Coordinator of Instructional Design at Reedley College and Outcomes. But when I see myself in my mind's eye, I will always see where I began, and that's as an ECE faculty member. And so, I knew I would have to pause right there. And so that's where I'm coming at you today, is a faculty member, because I still have the great opportunity to be able to teach classes. Most of you have probably been to a presentation on open educational resources, OER, so this shouldn't be old news to you, and don't worry, I'm not going to talk about it from that context. I'm going to get a little bit selfish, and I'm going to talk about teaching a ZTC course, zero textbook cost course, as a faculty member, and why I absolutely love it, and why I'm never going to go back, and hopefully entice you to come to a workshop later to learn about how you can do that too. Thank you. So I'll wait for them to change the slide up there. But so I'm going to talk about some of the aspects about why I love teaching a ZTC course. One of the major reasons is that on the very first day of instruction, I know that every single one of my students has access to my course content. That access to the course content isn't dependent on whether or not their financial aid check came in on time. It's not dependent on whether or not there's enough left over after they've paid the rest of their textbooks, after they've paid their rent, after they paid their childcare. I know that that is not dependent on whether or not they have access to that course content. Them having access to the course content isn't dependent on whether or not the library is open after they get off work. If I put a reserve copy into the library, it's not dependent on whether or not they ask ChatGPT the right questions to get the content. It's not dependent on whether or not Chegg has it cheap enough. It's not dependent on whether or not Amazon has it for rent. I can say, as their instructor, that each of you have the same access to the content that I have hand curated for you. Thank you. And that leads me to the next one, is that to me, this is the ultimate expression I have in the freedom I have as a faculty member. I love to say, I don't teach chapters, I teach concepts. A textbook publisher does not tell me what I teach in my class. I take a look at the curriculum outline of record that discipline experts in my field, both myself and my colleagues, have decided this is what needs to be taught. And I get to hand curate that content for my students. That is the ultimate expression in freedom for me, is I get to say to each and every one of them, as a discipline expert, as someone that's been out in the field, these are the things that you need to know, and I have handpicked each and everything that I'm offering you. And that leads me to the next thing. Once I made this transition to ZTC courses, zero textbook cost courses, using OER, other materials, the passion it reignited for my subject was such a surprise to me as I dove down and hand curated that content and said, yes, they need to know this, they need to know that, they need to know this. That excitement I felt when I first started my journey in early childhood was there again. And what I loved is that my students saw that. When I get the feedback back from them, they said, it's like she handpicked everything in our course for us. And then I have to say, I did, I handpicked it. Everything that you see, I handpicked for you. And then that leads me to the next point, while I love it. While I didn't get into education to be a hero, every single feedback that I get from my students, it's a profuse thank you. Thank you, thank you. And all I did was make the choice to not charge them for a textbook, and to them, it was so altering to their academic career. They didn't have to try and guess what content they needed to know. They knew that I had picked everything they needed to do to be successful in the course, and that the hard work was up to them. They didn't have a financial barrier to get to that content. It was available to each and every one of them. In the workshop later, if you choose to come, we'll talk about how easy it is to make that transition. But what some of you might be asking is this an unfunded thing? Do I have to do it on the side of my desk? It's not. Chancellor Goldsmith advocated to our board to allocate $1 million to us, to the colleges, to help fund the transition to ZTC courses. Not only is there that funds available, the state chancellor's office has also allocated thousands and thousands of dollars to help support these transitions as well. The district grants team is constantly curating and obtaining grants that'll help make that transition. The goal with all these monies is not only to help faculty and make that transition, but also to help operationalize this at our individual colleges to make it where it's an ongoing thing. It's not just, oh no, the grant's gone, we're done. It's something that keeps going and going and going. And that's the other thing we're going to talk about. Each one of your campuses has someone, many people who are passionate about it, but each has an OER liaison who is more than willing to help find content for your course, point you in the right direction, and even if this is brand new to you, I know we have a lot of new people in here, to explain to you what in the heck OER is and how can I make it happen in my course. So we have a workshop later this afternoon. I really hope to see as many of you as possible. If you're not able to make it, reach out to your OER liaisons on the campus. So thank you guys for allowing me to, again, talk to you about the importance of OER and ZTC.
Thank you, Amanda. That was wonderful. All right, so our next speakers. So technology is profoundly changing agriculture, and farm workers are being displaced from their jobs by that technology. The Ag Tech program provides job skills training and certification for farm workers and food industry workers, especially low-wage workers, whose jobs are likely to be eliminated by automation. More than 10,000 farm workers were surveyed about this topic, and here to present those results are Karen Aceves, for the Director of Ag Tech Workforce.
Hi, good morning. Is everyone still awake? Or are the burritos really hitting at this point? My name is Karen Aceves. I'm the Ag Tech Workforce Director, the F3 Regional Workforce Director. And what that means is I get to work with 8 community colleges in the Central Valley to build the workforce around farm workers and upskilling farm workers. And you just heard that we have over 10,000 surveys for farm workers. Now, I'll start by asking, raise your hand or raise your flag if you know someone that is a farm worker or you know someone that knows a farm worker. Look around. This is amazing. Look around, because I just want you to know that this would never happen anywhere else in the country. This is really unique to the Central Valley, that everyone here knows the population we're serving. And when we talk to people and we try to build this curriculum and we try to create jobs as farm workers are losing their jobs, as the climate gets worse for farm workers to work in, we're really trying to create a sense of know your client. Who are we trying to serve here? And at the end of the day, and at the heart of it, it's the farm workers. My grandfather was a bracero, and he didn't live to see this day, but I think about farm workers often, and I think about them and their lifespan being 50 years old. And as we transition our economy, as we build more jobs, I really think this is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue. And when we go to the fields and we talk to the farm workers, we all believe that they deserve better working conditions, that they want more, that they have aspirations. Yeah, let's applaud for that. And so what we're trying to do here is be the bridge between industry and farm workers. We know what industry wants. We're sitting at the table with industry, and we're talking to farm workers to see what their needs are. This is what these 10,000 surveys represent. And I don't know if you've Googled farm workers or farm worker surveys, but if you do, what you'll find is farm workers kind of being talked about as tools, how to have a more efficient farm worker in this line of work, or in dairy production, or so this is really trying to look at farm workers and their aspirations. We created a 30-question survey, and we partnered with very grassroots organizations that are trusted within the community, at churches, at Zumba halls, in the fields. And let me tell you, when you talk to a group like Las Panchas, they'll say there are 90-year-olds working in the fields today who, if they don't work tomorrow, they're not going to have a place to sleep, and they're not going to have food at their table. So at the heart of this is equity. We're going to have Claudia Castorena come up right now and talk about those surveys. At the end of the day, I just want to say that EDA funded this project. The Department of Commerce funded this project. They funded it at the tune of $27 million. The whole project was funded at $65.1 million. I just want to tell you why that's important. In October 2021, there was a competition called the Build Back Better Regional Challenge Initiative. It was funded by the Department of Commerce to find 20 finalists to fund these economic clusters that upskilled workforce, that created new industries, and at the heart of it were equitable. There were 529 applications, 37 in the state of California alone. There were 20 awardees. We were one award, the only one in California, and the highest award in the nation. So it's a big deal. So I just want to say up here, really my goal is to pass this off to Claudia to talk about the farm worker surveys, and just to say thank you to all the folks that have been involved in this curriculum process. There are many of you who have sat at the table with me and had the difficult and frustrating conversations, but you're still at the table because it matters to you, and you've put the farm worker at the heart of this, so thank you.
Good morning. My name is Claudia Castorena, Director of Binational of Central California, organization based here in Fresno. And this is my first speech ever. So again, like Ashley mentioned, breaking the barriers. This is mine. So, thank you. So personally, it hits home. My mom came from Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, Mexico, 20 years ago, looking to give me a better future. She was a general manager at a bank, a recognized bank in our country. She knew coming to the U.S. with no English was going to be challenging, but she came. She had to start from the bottom. So she came and worked as a housekeeper. My father-in-law came from Manzanillo, Colima, Mexico. He only completed up to 3rd grade of elementary school. He had to taught himself read and write, and now, 73 years later, because he came here as a boy, he is a supervisor of his own cuadrilla. Our parents, like the participants we're serving in the community, are smart individuals who didn't have the pathway of opportunity back in their country. They came knowing the sacrifices it would take. They are also raising lawyers, doctors, teachers. A representative like Robert Rivas, who is the first Speaker of the House, coming from a farm worker. They did all this with no education, no tools, and all the reasons to fail. And yet, I'm here speaking you in front of you fine people as a director of an organization. And Ricardo Castorena, our CEO, president of the organization, a former educator like yourselves, is now the president and CEO of his own organization. So thank you for utilizing a survey to give farm workers who feed our nation a voice. The survey allows people like our parents finally have a dream of their own and to ask themselves, what if? So let me show you my team. Oh, thank you to my team, of course. California Farm Worker Foundation, Las Panchas, Comunidad Unidad Benito Juárez, and Pequeños Empresarios, who are the ones in the fields going to our farm workers and asking them the questions, giving them a voice. Survey locations. The survey was conducted across Madera, Fresno, Tulare, Kings counties. And there we are at health fairs, Zumbathons, and we go to their work too. Survey respondents. So over 1,000 respondents, survey administrated from Merced and Kings County, and the majority are between the ages of 25 and 44 years old. They are smart and young. 99% of the respondents are foreign and identify as Hispanic or Latinos. And the majority of the respondents have 1 through 5 dependents. So how do they feel financially? So you can see a lot of them have, the WIC, EDD, unemployment, disability, medical, Medicare, and only 22% have none. How important do you view education? This is a shocking number for us because you would think that they are just not dreaming, but as you can see, 29% is important, and very important is a 46%. So that shows you that they want to dream, that they want to learn. Educational questions and level of education. Only 4% have no school, some high school, 11%, and we have 3% with some college that are in the fields, and we have graduates in the fields as well. So that gives us hope. 70% of the respondents have education are under middle school level. Elementary, 30%, and middle school, 33%. What programs are you most interested in? So as you can see, they're interested in a lot of things. And of course, ESL is one of them, 69%, because they have the language barrier. Why were you unable to continue your education? And the highest number is, of course, they needed to work. Survival mode. Are you interested in going back to school? And there's the hope. The number says it all. 66% say yes. Do you have reliable transportation? And most of them do. Where will you be ideal location to take a class? Most of them don't mind doing it at home, but then also a high number wouldn't mind going to the colleges either. If you could take courses online, would it increase your interest in going back? And 70% said yes. What would be the ideal time to take the classes for you? And we have the highest number between 5 and 9 p.m. when we know they're off work. And only 25% will like to do it on the weekends. How far are you willing to travel? Most of them will travel 5 miles, 10 miles, even 20 miles. Would you be interested if there was childcare offer? And of course they would. What programs are you already aware of in your community? So there are the answers. Of course, ESL with the highest number. Would you like more information on this program? 50% have answered yes. And of course, if we go to them, which is what Binational does. And the key takeaways: lean demand for upskilling, reskilling despite the interest cost, it remains at 8%. Online learning, 70%. And then farm workers continue to have to choose between working or going to school with the 46%. Obviously, all of them with different reasons why. So as we can see, we still have different challenges. A lot of them have to do with either I work or either I educate myself. And thank you so much.
Well, I think she did a good job for her first time. Give her a round of applause. Sometimes it's hard to be up here and speak in front of a large group, so this was a good coming out party, right? So I hope you all enjoyed the morning. Let's give another round of applause for all of our speakers today. I'm going to do the obligatory selfie. All right. In a few minutes, we are going to head across Inyo Street to the exhibit hall where we'll enjoy lunch, have some fun, and attend breakout sessions. At the luncheon, you'll give your input on the year ahead through some interactive conversation and polling. Luncheon seating is open, so feel free to sit with friends and make new ones too. As we reflect back on our morning speakers, I am boosted in my belief that it is an honor to work in education. And I hope you feel that way too. The investments we are making in students will have returns that reach far into a future we cannot see. You have plenty of time to get over for lunch. As you walk out, if you see the signs for the QR codes, you can see the sessions that are happening, so scan those and you'll get your information you need. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you over at lunch.